Prospective AFL players must be 18 years old by the 31st of December to be eligible in that year's draft. This rule change is fairly recent, as prior to the 2009 draft, players could be drafted at around high school age. The AFL has seen and will only ever see 7 players debut at the age of 15. The youngest of that being Claude CLAS, who in the year 1900 debuted for the St Kilda Football Club at 15 years and 209 days. CLAS' very first game for the Saints ended up being the club's very first win in its history, coming against Melbourne. In an odd turn of events, the match was initially a draw. However, about 1 week later, the match was overturned, giving the Saints the win after a third quarter point from Melbourne was disallowed. CLAS had kicked 1 goal in the match, and that win would be his first and only one in his career, hanging up the boots after 23 matches and 8 goals. The player who has played the most games in the AFL as the youngest player, and the most recent player to debut at just 2 months shy of his 16th birthday, is Tim Watson. Watson debuted for Essendon in round 7 of 1977, where the Bombers and the Tigers drew. Watson would then go on to feature in a record 86 games as the youngest player in the VFL. To put that into perspective, it wasn't until Watson's 5th season in round 13 of the 1981 season that he was no longer the youngest player in the league. Today, the average player is 23 years old by their 5th season. Watson would enter his 5th season as a 19-year-old and turn 20 on the 13th of July, 1981. One of the all-time greatest players in the history of the game, Dick Reynolds, attracted silverware like no other, with 4 premierships, 7 Essendon Best and Fairest, Essendon and AFL Team of the Century, and being rightly inducted as a legend in the AFL Hall of Fame in 1996. Reynolds is also one of 4 players to win 3 Brownlows, and his first win came in his 2nd season with the Bombers in 1934, making him the youngest recipient of the award at 19 years and 91 days old. During this era, Reynolds would be considered a big-bodied rover, standing at 179 centimetres tall and 82 kilograms. A tenacious leader who would captain and coach the Bombers in the premierships of 1942, 1946, 1949 and 1950. Reynolds, by all accounts, was noticed as the quintessential football man. Reynolds epitomised the characteristics of a true captain: leadership, tenacity, experience and wisdom. It is typical for a captain to be a seasoned veteran of the team who has proven themselves worthy to lead the 21 other players and to manage the team on field during tough times. However, that was not the route taken by Melbourne in the 2012 season when they appointed Jack Trengove as co-captain of the club alongside Jack Grimes. The Melbourne Football Club had been experiencing its darkest days at that stage with lackluster performances. It was decided to appoint 2 young players as the team's leaders, with Trengove being one of them. The decision was ridiculed and criticised within the industry, and perhaps rightly so, as the knock-on effects may have affected Trengove's career. Melbourne would continue to suffer, winning only 4 games and finishing 16 over only Gold Coast and GWS in their inaugural season. Trengove would take a slump in form, and the pressures of leading as well as performing at high level would result in him relinquishing the captaincy in 2013 after a disappointing 2-win season. Trengove cited the need to focus on his own development for stepping down. But at 20 years and 181 days old, Jack Trengove became the youngest captain in AFL history. In today's game, the key forward position is one where a player may take 5 or 6 years in the system to hit their prime and become a consistent goal kicker of 3 to 4 goals a game. For John Longmire, this only took 3 seasons, because in 1990, at the age of just 19, Longmire would become the youngest player to win the Coleman medal. Over 22 games with North Melbourne, Horse kicked 98 goals and 60 behinds, averaging 4.5 goals per game. That season, he would break the North Melbourne single-game goal-kicking record, kicking 12 goals in a round 2 match, and would break his own record 12 weeks later when he kicked a massive bag of 14 goals. The only misfortune of that season was that Longmire would finish the season 2 goals shy of kicking 100 goals in a season, having displayed a disappointing 2 goals and 8 behind performance against Collingwood in the final match of the season. This standout season would still earn Longmire North Melbourne's Best and Fairest award as well. The youngest player to kick 100 goals in a season, including the finals, is John Coleman. whose short-lived career of 6 seasons saw him kick the ton in 3 seasons. The first time Coleman achieved the feat was in his debut season in 1949. Coleman was 20 years old at the time and would kick his 100th goal in the grand final against Carlton. Coleman would kick 6 goals in that game, with his first season sparking a monumental career that was cut short due to a knee injury. He would follow his amazing 100-goal season in 1950 with 120 goals. In his second game ever, a 17-year-old Mark McGow would have a standout performance in the 2002 Anzac Day clash, collecting 19 kicks, 5 handballs and 6 marks. The performance in the rain would earn McGow the Anzac Day medal, making him the youngest recipient of the award. His performance was held in high regard by coach Mick Malthouse, who said McGow's performance was his favourite memory from the 11 Anzac Day matches he was part of. In 1979, Carlton and Collingwood faced off in the grand final. This match came down to the wire, with Carlton winning by 5 points. The final goal of the match has gone down in AFL history as Wayne Harms would kick the ball toward the forward pocket boundary, follow up the ball, and right before it would go out of bounds, tap the ball back into play for Ken Sheldon to score the goal to bring the Blues up by 5 points. Decades since that grand final, fans would debate whether the ball truly remained in play or if it should have been called out of bounds. That grand final also marked the awarding of the inaugural Norm Smith Medal for the best player on the day. The medal was awarded to Wayne Harms, who would be the first and still to this day the youngest player to win the Norm Smith Medal at 19 years and 232 days old. In the preceding 44 years, there has not been a younger Norm Smith recipient. Alan Jeans is widely regarded as one of the greatest AFL coaches in history, coaching the St Kilda Football Club to its first and only premiership in 1966. By the end of his 575-game coaching career, spanning between 1961 and 1992, Jeans had won 4 premierships, one with the Saints and a further 3 with Hawthorn in the 80s. Coming in as a coach for St Kilda in 1961, at the age of 27, Jeans holds the record as the youngest non-playing coach in AFL/VFL history. Over the years, the AFL has seen many premiership teams of varying levels of experience and age. Most recently, the 2022 Geelong Premiership team had an average age of 28 years old, including 10 players at 30 years or older. The 1993 Essendon Premiership team nicknamed the Baby Bombers, as 20 of the 22 players were under the age of 25 on the day. The Collingwood team of 2010 fielded players with an average age of 24, likewise with the Bulldogs in 2016. The most recent team averaging 23 years of age was the 1978 Hawthorn side, but the youngest premiership side belongs to the 1958 Collingwood side, whose average age was 22. This team beat Melbourne, who were dominant in the 50s. Collingwood fielded half of their team with players aged 22 or younger, and 4 teenagers to triumph in their last premiership until they would win 32 years later in 1990.